Great. So good evening, everyone. And today we are taking you through this presentation that aims to give you an overall integrated view of how to work on your impact diameter and how to ensure that you are on the right track while recording, reporting, measuring, and communicating your impact. So impact is basically a change in an outcome that is caused by an organization, be it a small or a big business or an enterprise. Everyone, while undergoing through a business creation process, has certain impact or outcomes, because all of the entrepreneurs, you are working with either the people or the planet. So you have your footprint on both of these entities, and your outcome has certain impact. Your outcome is affecting them in certain ways, which is called as your impact. So it can be positive or negative and intended or unintended, because at times you are not aware of certain additional outcomes or the externalities which are a part of your business creation process, and they may have undesired or unintended outcome. So to build this conversation further, I would like to invite my colleague Amanda, who is going to share with you a few pictures so that you have some more practical idea about how to look forward to measure your impact.
Okay, everybody, thank you so much. Next slide, please. First, thanks so much for joining. And I wanted to share with you a couple of products here that are for sale. These are some awesome chairs. They are made of teak. You're going to want them on your back patio. You need to buy like, I don't know, 10 of them so all your family members can sit and hang out when they come to your house. There's two different kinds available at the store. One of them is $400 and one of them $700. I'm going to ask anybody right there to put in the chat box which one they would buy, option A or option B. You can just write A or B in the chat box. I hope that to light up. Just based on this knowledge alone. I mean, you got to buy 10 of them. It's like $4,000 or $7,000. I see everybody's writing number A. And of course, that would make plenty of sense. But when we go and check a little bit more, next slide, please. When you check a little bit more, you might, if you knew the story, you might realize that the chair A, even though it is identical in physical to chair B, is produced in completely different ways. Chair A, the teak plant comes from native forests throughout India or Indonesia, using hard labor, destroying the forest, whereas chair number B is actually grown in a sustainable way. In this case, in Latin America, on land that's already been deforested 50 years ago, that wasn't being used for anything, where the teak is actually bringing it to life and bringing value to people where nothing had been growing before. Knowing that, you might be convinced to purchase a more expensive chair. Obviously, the importance of the story is that many of the services or products that folks here are offering, they may be more expensive, they may not be. But one way or another, it's differentiated from the normal kind of product in that there's a really great story that each of us could be telling. And if we don't tell it, no one will know. So this entire session is about how to tell that story, how to use data to do so, and how to catch people's attention. So again, wanted to bring up one more important precept in our storytelling, which is the concept of a baseline, the concept of before and after. Here we see this gentleman who has before and after with dental surgery. I picked the photo because it's kind of jarring. But you know, if you just meet someone who has nice teeth, ding, you won't know the difference. But if you see all the work they've gone through, you see where they've started from, you will see that they've made a lot of progress and that the intervention has made a difference. Again, we can see this here in the mountainside, a green mountainside that over years, maybe 20 years, has been reforested. If we'd forgotten where the mountainside started, we wouldn't know where it ended up. And again, here's another photo. So just want to keep that in mind. And even if your company's been going for 2 or 3 years, there are ways that you can paint a picture of that baseline. Back to you, Kavita.
Thank you so much, Amanda, for sharing the wonderful examples. So I would like to explore with you the different dimensions of impact, which would enable you to identify what are the overall different parameters which are governing your impact metrics. So, what, who, how much, contribution, and risk. These are the five major dimensions around which the concept of impact revolves. When I come to what, it means what outcome the company is contributing to. What is the outcome that your enterprise, your startup, your business venture is creating? Then who, which stakeholders are experiencing the outcome? Who are the stakeholders who are experiencing the outcome that your business venture is creating? How much tells you about what degree of change and how many stakeholders are getting affected by it. Are they underserved or they are overserved through the outcomes that your business process is creating? Then coming to contribution, it tells whether companies' efforts resulted in an outcome or how the situation would have been different if the company was not in existence. The last one is the risk, which tells you about the likelihood that impact will be different than expected, which happens most of the time. That is why it is said that impact can be positive, can be negative, it can be intended, it can be unintended. So these are the five different dimensions which you should look upon while designing your impact metrics.
Amanda and Kavita, I have some input.
Yes, please.
Okay, Kavita, actually what happened in real life, if you bring such product like $400 product and $700 product in the real life, people will all, most of the people, or they are looking forward for the bottom line. Okay, they will only ask for 400 rupees product. Okay, because they want to impact their bottom line.
Hey,
Many
Amit,
people
perfect.
doesn't care. Many people doesn't care. Many people don't don't value the thing. Yeah, all this impact is fine, but my bottom line is affecting due to this. So I will go for 400 rupees.
Perfect, perfect. So that's definitely a main point. I wanted to bring up that you need to differentiate yourself. And so as much as you can to keep the cost the same, of course you really should, because cost is going to be the most important. But people will sometimes, certain niches will pay more, and that depends on how you market yourself. So in as much as you can, I think let's focus on the differentiating story, because even if you have a price that's the same, people won't still know how you're different. But if they see the story, then they will. So even if your price is the same, then they'll still be more inclined. So I think no matter what your price point is with your product or service, knowing the story behind it is sustainable or helps out communities, will still tip people in the favor of purchasing from you. And it can also open up doors to different kinds of social investors. But that's a really great point, Amit, which all of us should every day be striving to get the lowest cost that we can while still achieving the mission. Thanks. And thanks for joining. Amit is from our 2020 group and is working with sustainable honey in the Sundarbans and around Pune.
Right.
And,
Thank you, Amanda.
And Amit, I would also like to add to what Amanda said, that is what this session is all about, how to communicate the story behind your positioning, pricing. So people would not be knowing why the cost of a chair is $400 and why $700. If we are able to communicate the impact and the supply chain or the value chain which we are creating, which is innovative, focused towards sustainability, so we don't know how many customers are going to click on this and they would like to encourage the sustainable practices while they have the purchasing power for buying an expensive chair. So we just aim to focus on communicating your impact through your different initiatives. And in this session, we are going to talk about all these things. So the agenda of this session is around these 4 points, and I'm going to talk about the first one, why we should measure impact. Why? So impact is at the heart of what you do. As I have said, all of you are running enterprises, small businesses, and you are working with largely the planet and the people. So you are creating outcomes that are affecting them, that are influencing them, and you have a responsibility towards the social and the environmental aspects that you are governing through your business models. So it is very much important to record your impact. Second thing is that it defines your core values. So business have certain intentions, values, motivations, which are reflected through the outcomes you are creating, and which in turn translates to your impact. So it is very much important to show that what are the core values your business is focusing on. And depending upon the motivation, only enterprises' intentions range from broad commitments such as to mitigate risk, to achieve SDGs, or to leave a unique positioning on the society or the stakeholders. So impact is very much essential. Then to create transparency in the market and differentiate your core offerings, like we have shared some pictures, also eco-friendly versus non-eco-friendly. So you need to communicate clearly and create a transparent market, and then getting impact investment. So which is the need of the hour? Impact investors, they select the investments to deliver the impact they want. All of them have broad goals about what they want to see. They will accordingly assess the impact potential of the enterprises, say whether they want to see the increase in green cover, the increase in rural and tribal livelihood, the increase in biodiversity, or decrease in poverty, or say any of the sustainable development goals. And sometimes they not focus on any particular sector, but a particular outcome. So that is why, to fulfill all these aspects, to work on all of them, it is important to measure your impact. Then, as Amanda also talked about the baseline, that people quickly forget from where they came. So to memorialize and to preserve our memories of from where we started and in which direction we are heading, it is very much important to measure the impact. It also is a strong indicator of showing your progress to the larger social community. Being restoration entrepreneur of the environmental and social sector is crucial for you, and measuring this impact enables you to show the progress. Then coming to the second point, identify what and how to measure. Now you have known why to measure the impact. Now it comes to what you should measure and how you should measure. So now we are coming down to the key performance indicators, which help you narrow down your broader commitments, objectives to measurable points, action points largely. So key performance indicators, it is a measure to evaluate the performance of your organization against the objectives that you are building for you. So as I have already said, it helps you to narrow down your business objectives, and thus in this process, it cuts down the complexity, and it reduces large amount of measures into few measurable key indicators. We are going to tell you what are the key indicators and how you should be able to find the relevant indicators for your businesses. These are largely the broader KPIs you should be looking for, which are related to the environmental, socioeconomic, financial, and business processes. So when we talk about the environmental KPIs, it can be anything. Say it can be waste reduction, or water consumption, or biodiversity enhancement, or related to afforestation, restoring the soil carbon, or related to energy consumption. On the right side, there are certain key indicators which you should look forward to, and you can add your indicators to this brief list. It can be around, like I said, percentage change in the soil carbon that you are creating, the pounds of trash you are diverting from the landfills, or it can be about the different native tree species you are planting, the percentage improved survival rate of plants. So based upon your business venture, you should be able to identify the environmental related KPIs for you, which are derived from the objectives you have set for your venture. Now, coming to the socio-economic KPIs, as the name itself indicates, these are related to the outcomes you are creating for the society to develop a just and equitable economy. So there are certain parameters, they can be around the sustainable livelihoods or the local businesses opportunities, the jobs that are being created through your business ventures, the groups, associations, partnerships you are developing with the indigenous groups, say the tribals or the farmer groups or the women. So your indicators can narrow down to say percentage of women employed, percentage income growth of participating farmers. And for these, you have to again follow the baseline rule. You have to document from where you have started and how much enhancement or increment you have got through your positive intended outcomes. Now, I would like my colleague Amanda to share with you some KPIs around the financial parameters and traction.
Okay, yes, great. As Amit was saying, sometimes what people care about most is how well you're doing. And these kind of people would be perhaps retail partners. They would want to make sure your stuff is selling. Additionally, investors or bankers who want to loan or invest in you, they want to see that you're actually selling things. And there is a time and a place, of course, for sharing those informations, but you guys should be keeping track of it. And I'm sure that many of you are. If you have a bookkeeper or an internal accountant, you should be able to keep track of this. But we can go over and see how financial KPIs can also, and traction KPIs can also tie in to improve your social impact as well. For instance, we're going to look at simple things that you can read here on the slides, and just want to bring up the fact that these slides are definitely going to be made available to you like others. So this is something that you can refer back to make sure to identify maybe which KPIs you will be keeping track of. And business process related KPIs as well. Looking at how you're doing with your sales and marketing. Did you achieve specific intellectual property? And these kinds of points will be really important to your future business partners or investors. Where are you serving, and how deeply are you penetrating each of those geographic markets? So these are different KPIs that you can keep track of and have goals for improving. Next slide. This now that you've had a ton of different KPIs, your head can be swirling perhaps, wanted to share this particular wheel with you and the guide that it comes from. So World Resources Institute has created an entire guide, which you've got the link to there. So you can always click onto it after this session, this entire guide, which is about road to restoration, and that means land restoration. And so here we're talking about different barriers to sustainability that businesses often face. But you will see that in the color on the outside, there's different ways to address those barriers.
Hi. Hello.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Rajul, do you have a question?
Yeah. I had a question from the previous thing before even the financial thing started. So my question is, like, when we showed that the key indicators, the impact which was created, you talked about the carbon, the input cost. So my question is that during the initial phase of a startup, right, we do not have those numbers. We can estimate saying that, okay, now I have a product which could reduce the input of the fertilizer, but so and so based on the literature. So now, is that good enough kind of an indicator if I have to say that, okay, this is the percentage, in fact, about the carbon sequestration or whatever the carbon footprint? How do I estimate? This is very difficult to estimate. So how do I do that?
Rajul, yeah, Amanda, I would like to take that question. Rajul, thank you so much for this important question. So it doesn't matter how small your scale of operations are, and it just means you have to begin your journey. You can start identifying your KPIs where you would be working in the coming future. And when it comes to actually either doing the carbon accounting or measuring your carbon sequestration or other footprints, there are well-defined companies, agencies, global organizations that offer their services for doing that, and you need not to manage it all alone. And in the coming slides, I'm going to share with you one example of a startup, how their website looks different over the years. Last year, their parameters were all in single digit. Say, land restoration, it is in single digit. Now, in 1 year, it has come to 3 digits. So don't hesitate in showing whatever small efforts you are making towards identifying your KPIs. We want to make you aware to begin your journey of identifying that impact measurement is really required, and you can just start building upon the basis which you would be following in the years to come.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so many important topics were touched on in that question. So some of them we'll also be getting to a little bit later. One of them might be, how do I choose which variable would be most important to me, because I don't have time to do it all. So again, through this book, you can look at, there's many different themes and goals here, ranging from that your business might touch on, ranging from culture, community, improved food and products, improved soil. And this just gives you a great idea of specific metrics that you could be charging here. So we'd like to give this to everybody as a resource that they can check out later, and realize that you will have to prioritize which KPIs are most relevant to your business, which KPIs can you actually collect in a way that makes sense for you and are relevant to either your future investors and your clients. So, but one of the best ways to start is actually to identify KPIs for yourself. And this is where we're going to ask you to be collaborative with us. During the session, we promised you that you'd have time to kick off a plan for your KPIs, which is an impact plan. So we'd like you to do that now. Check the chat box. I'm going to put into the chat box this link. Hold on, and it might look different, but it's to the same document. No, it's the same one. So the link is there now, and there's actually 3 different pages to this document. Click on the link, and I'll just keep talking while you explore.
Yeah.
So when you click on the link, it's taking you to like a little survey, and you will get the responses from the survey when you're done from it. So Go ahead, start filling it out. And you'll see that there's just a lot of different KPIs there that we've split into different divisions, environmental, tree related, social KPIs, and check everything that's important to you now that you might be collecting already, that you want to collect, or that's not relevant. And this will just put that marker in place. And then perhaps later on, you can refer back to this and see which KPIs you really want to focus on. But this is just a brainstorming sheet. So that's the first page. When you're done with it, you press submit, and then we'll just go on. So there are 3 pages to this same survey, and we'll refer back to it throughout the session.
And in the interest of saving our times, I can suggest that you can also start filling the Google form maybe later. We want to make you aware that this first page of the Google form is about the KPIs, which we shared with you right now, and take your time to identify your KPIs. And Amanda, I think we should continue the presentation so that we are able to finish on time.
That sounds great. Perfect.
Yeah. So please continue.
Okay, great. So then something else that we mentioned, this is a multi-step process. Once you've considered many different KPIs, which ones are relative to you or not, you would have to prioritize them. We can give you some tips on how to do that, or you can talk that over with each other in small breakout groups in our future networking sessions. But once you've selected a few KPIs, you do want to make sure that you can create smart goals around what you'd like to achieve. And so again, this is something many of you might have heard before, so you can just check back to it. Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time bound. A lot of times time bound is the goal. And you can estimate. If you make it or not, you can always update update your progress and update those. At this time, we also did want to include that a lot of people want to tie their KPIs back into the Sustainable Development Goals. That's a really big framework that everyone kind of, always mentions. The important thing that I would say about the Sustainable Development Goals is that if you look at your KPIs first, then you can kind of come back to this framework and say, okay, which KPIs are really linked to which goals? Like, what impact am I having? Because a lot of times these Sustainable Development Goals are really nebulous. They're kind of conceptual. But now that you've really come up with some numbers or some specific stories that you can tell, you can have that number on your website, that good health and well-being. And then you can talk about how you have zero chemical products. Just for an example, you can really be specific about how your business is doing that, which helps you tie into future funding that you might be getting from social investors.
It is
Next
always, and for restoration entrepreneurs, it is always important to align your KPIs to the SDGs, because these are the global united efforts and the challenges which have been thrown to all the entrepreneurs, and the investors are looking forward to the entrepreneurs who are solving some of these goals. So it is better to identify your KPIs at an early stage and align your goals with these larger global commitments.
Great, next slide.
Yeah, and here is an impact template which we would be sharing with you, and we would be uploading it on the Mighty Networks as well. This template, you can go through after the presentation and let us know your views by filling it. It showcases the 5 dimensions which we have discussed with you during this presentation. So based on those 5 dimensions, it has narrowed it down to the different objectives, and then you can write down your indicators and the source, how you measure it, whether it is positive or negative, and what are your reference for collecting the data of those impacts. So if I want to share this template, I would have to stop sharing and I can go to the document. So considering the time limit, I'm skipping it for now, but it would be available to you on Mighty Networks as well. And as a beginner, you can always follow this Excel template, which would definitely be helping you out to begin your journey of impact measurement. Now, coming to the third point of the agenda, create your baseline and monitor regularly. So you should be following the different analysis that you want to do, and you have to reflect them through different visuals, through different graphics that enable you to communicate clearly to the larger audiences. How are you measuring your impact? How are you regularly tracking and monitoring them? And based upon the qualitative and quantitative aspect of that KPI, you need to select the different modes of collecting the data and reflecting and reporting your impact. You can go for surveys, you can go for focus groups, as most of you are dealing with the farmers or the rural people who do not understand or have limitations of awareness in accessing the digital modes and more complex algorithms. So you can go for simple interviews, and then you can have your impact comparisons either through your organization only, how you were doing before and after, and either by comparing your solutions to the others available in the market. So Amanda, would you like to explain this slide?
Sure. So I think we've kind of come to the part where we're showing some examples, it looks like, but also if anyone has been filling out because some people can't stop or would want to do it, if you have been filling out the form, this is where we start to think, well, what kind of products can you make? I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I can tell you this slide, but Kavita's a little bit out of order than what I was expecting. Basically, this slide is an example of, yeah, exactly. So look, I guess we're getting to the examples now.
Yes.
This is what I was looking for. Yeah. The one where, the next slide where it had a whole bunch of listings. That one, yes, sure, perfect. so basically, when you have your data, that's really great, but we need to think about how we can integrate that in to our everyday business materials so that people can see about it. There's plenty of different ways to do that, and I listed a few here. But you have to think of the audiences. So your website is a great place to do that, as well as your pitch, as well as if you have a product, putting some stories on the actual product packaging. So we've got a bunch of different ways here. You can read through them, but it can vary from putting your KPIs achieved on your homepage, testimonials, photo galleries, perhaps before and after, having an entire impact section listed on your website, the case study. And so we can go to the next slides, because these are just more. Yeah, definitely. There's so many ways, and you don't have to do them all. So when you get to page 2, I believe, on the Google survey that we linked into the chat box, you're going to be able to select the ways that you think would be relevant for your product, displaying your certifications and all. And so that's basically part 2, is figuring out which are all of the possible ways that you think are probable to display your results. And again, this is to give you the universe, the universe of options that are relevant for you. Then once you receive your results, you can always go back to it, maybe highlight through with your team which ones you want to do and when. Again, coming up with those goals for your company. And we did want to take some time to share some examples. And most of these examples are going to be so that you can reference them later and say, how is this relevant to me? How can I do something like this? Because there's no need to recreate the wheel when you've seen different ways that companies are showing their traction and their impact. So this first one is just an example of KPIs. These are just some KPIs from a long time ago from WhatsApp. And that's how they describe it. It's very popular on different websites. This is an example of how KPIs can be placed on your website.
And Amanda, I would like to show this to the cohort. Rajul, the question you had shared. So this is the picture from the website of Krishi Tantra, an emerging startup. The first one is from last year, where they had their KPIs. You can see their acreage is 1. The number of farmers is 758 just. They have 38 partners. And this is their website showing their numbers as on this date. So never hesitate to show even a single digit number on your website, and always just keep on updating your website. It's not make it just not make it a redundant place, and keep on updating your figures as and when you are able to monitor and record it. So this is the sustainability section of PepsiCo, where they have showcased their journey of sustainability from 2009 till date through different pictures, through different stories. You can scroll through these tabs, and there are different stories on the website. This one is really very good and innovative, and now most of the people who are working and developing sustainable products have started showing where the price that you are paying for their product is going to. So this is a breakup of the price, like how much is going to the farmers, how much to raw materials and impact. And this gives you an indication. It gives the customer a very fair indication of the different segments where the price they are paying is actually going. So it helps to create an impact. Then this picture is from a food processing startup making the confectionery products out of the pearl millet, and they are showing the nutritive value by breaking it down to all the components that are distinguishing their product from the other organic or responsible products that people are claiming. Yes, and then you can also enlist your environmental impact goals on your website, and you can clearly identify the KPIs related to these goals. You can align these goals to the sustainable development goals, not just the global goals, but if you are able to also align them with the national commitments or the national determined commitments that India has with the global forum. So that is also going to position your venture in altogether a different segment. Then this gives you a global overview showcasing the map, and also your figures on your website gives you a global overview to your all the stakeholders about the geographies where you are operating and about your expansion plans, and you can think in different creative ways. And this is an old picture of a forest where they have shown the before and after images, and we have already told you the impact of before and after. So you can see these examples, they are all available online, and you can start thinking and creating innovative examples and pictures for your businesses. So Amit is here and he's working for bees. So this is one of the example how people are showcasing their social and environmental ventures in a different ways of through videos and through attractive graphics. And sometimes you need not to show the pictures or even the numbers, but through the storytelling or through some small captions only, you can create a bigger impact by producing impactful captions or some logo, some sort of slogans for the ventures. These are just some more examples. I can quickly scroll them. Then product brochures, they are always a great thing to do, and they bring more clarity to your stakeholders and the users about your products. And of course, nowadays, video tours. These are really important for the people who are working for agri-tourism, organic farming, sustainable farming. So it gives a real-time evidence to your stakeholders what you are exactly doing, what are the geographies in which you are creating interventions and doing great work. And now come to case study. So ITC, you all are aware of, they are known for their great commitments in the sustainable development and social and farm forestry related initiatives. So they are declaring very clearly on their website what are their targets, what are their KPIs, and how they are fulfilling them. As I have said, don't hesitate to mention whatever small commitments and KPIs you have for yourself, and you can showcase the different strategies you are developing for the indigenous people, for the communities, to involve them in your projects. And you can also upload your case studies on your website. So they give, as I said, this all shows that you have evidence-backed work. So don't hesitate from doing all these practices and in fact innovating new ones. And we want you to share with us what are the new things that are coming to your mind and you are planning to work upon them. So the part 3 of our presentation, it wants to brainstorm around what are the 3 steps that you will take to improve your impact reporting this week. And this is the 3rd segment of the same Google form. To avoid any complexity in terms of creating more forms, we have created one Google form which has 3 sections, and that addresses the 3 parts of this presentation. So on one page, you will be getting access to identify different KPIs in the environmental, social, and other domains. The second page talks about what are the different ways to show your impact. So you can fill out that in the second page of the Google form. And now this 3rd part, you can fill it in the same Google form in the 3rd page. And the 3rd page talks about these 3 broader open-ended questions. So please share with us the top 1 to 2 aspects that worry you the most after hearing to this presentation, or you are excited about that. Let us jump on these points and start working. And also the other areas that you would like to explore around the impact assessment. There is an announcement for you towards the end of this session about the mentorship calls. So fill out this Google form and do an assessment. What are the points you want to discuss with your mentors in the coming calls that we are beginning from next week? And other, if you have any additional or optional comments, please share with us during while you are filling these Google Forms. And there are some more examples from the global business communities that people are working across globe. So Amanda, would you like to share some examples?
Sure, this is just a few more. So while I'm sharing examples, I would, encourage people to listen and take a look. If you feel like it, fill out that survey form. But again, these are just some more examples so that you can see your value chains, some examples of value chains you might be working with. This is an example of an article that explains to people about your sector. So some people might say, okay, bamboo, that's fine. I've heard it's eco-friendly. Why do I care? And you might need to take a time to actually explain that, maybe from your business point of view or your community's point of view, why bamboo or amla, or whatever product you're working with is actually sustainable. So explainer articles are something you can do. You can host them on your website. You can post them on LinkedIn. You can try and get them published by the local newspapers and such. This is just an example of a sustainable rubber company that there is in Guatemala. And I wanted to bring up the fact that what someone else brought up earlier, which is, well, how will people know whether they can trust us with whether what we're saying is true? So credibility is an important factor. So this company put that they had 180,000 jobs per hectare. That sounds like a lot of jobs per hectare. It doesn't really sound true. So you don't want to put numbers like that there, but any numbers that you have, if you can get those verified by other people. Some companies within our cohort in the past have worked with universities. Maybe you can hire a third party to verify your impacts. That's where certifications can come in if there's different certifications that exist in your area. Let's see. This is an example of a company that is marketing an actual product as a project as a package for investment. So they, for instance, have a certain number of hectares and they'll be able to plant it if they receive this much money. Just wanted to put that there as an example for anyone else who might have a project that once financed would really bring a lot of value to an area. We can do the next slide too. Let's see. Again, this is another example of educational primers. So, if you are growing sustainable eggs or sustainable meat or anything that's sustainable dairy, sustainable anything, an explainer blog can really help get the message out to people and spread the science, because a lot of our companies here that are in the Land Accelerator are based on science, which means not everybody knows about it. Again, this is just an example of an About Us section, which every website has. So if you've got a website, and I think almost everybody does in this cohort, definitely look about how you can use your About Us section to differentiate yourself, to tell your social story. And you might call it About Us, you might call it Impact, you might call it Save the Bees, but definitely be sure to have something on there. Let's see. This is talking about a product testimonial. So just wanted to show the importance of, if you have different products, make it really clear for people to find out where it is. And then you can have testimonials or studies attached with that. This is important for people. This is a great, just to go, you don't have to go back to it, but that website was a really good example. So for anyone who has organic land inputs or different fertilizers or pest management sprays or something, that was a great website that you can reference. And this is about furniture. So anybody who might be creating, wood replacements, this is a great website to reference on that kind of value chain. Wood or plastic replacements. So this brings us to the official end of the presentation. We have about 13 minutes before our second speaker joins us. What we can do with that time, obviously, is some question answers. But Kavita, do you have any other points that we could
Yes.
cover?
So we are having 10 more minutes around. So I think, first of all, we are happy to take if there are any questions, and then we can go for our announcements. Yeah, I could hear someone was asking a question.
Aeroshil has his hand raised.
Oh, perfect. Go ahead, Rachel, please.
Yes, so this is Aerofil from Nivea Devices. I have a quick question around that, the UN Sustainable Development Goals. I see a lot of that being used in by many of the companies. But just wondering, so how do we basically depict this? Is there like an agency which identifies those KPIs and everything that we're following in the company, and they validate, then only we can put this thing on our website? So how does it basically work? Because I've seen a lot in many of the companies using this.
So what I can suggest you is that, first of all, KPIs have to be identified by the venture, by the business, because you know about your activities. So it is not required that a certain external agency or a third party validates your KPIs, but the data that you are collecting for your KPIs should be verifiable. That is why we have shared an impact template in the presentation, where you can narrow down your objectives to the indicators which are verifiable, measurable, which give you and the larger community clarity about how you are measuring your impact, and it should be verifiable. As I said, that based upon the nature of the KPI, whether it is a quantitative or a qualitative one, you need to opt for parameters to measure it. You have to record your source from where you have measured it in the impact template. And then at the end, you can just do a conclusion whether it has turned out to be a positive impact or a negative impact. And then if you identify certain deviation, as I said, that these are the impact can be intended or unintended. So if you come across certain things that are unintended, then you can go for a course correction or a midterm review of your KPIs. So this is largely the standard process which anybody should go for identifying KPIs and working on them.
Can I just to add to Kavita's point, Aeroshil, if you actually go to the UN SDG website, over there you can actually click on all of the goals, and they have more like further detailed information. And once, like Kavita suggested, you should think about your KPIs, and then think of what SDGs align with your impact metrics. So I would suggest you go to their website, visit their website, and they have a lot of detailed information under every UN SDG goal.
Yes. So the larger 17 goals, they have narrowed them down to, I think, more than 100 indicators. So for every goal, there are indicators. Visit the website, identify which are workable for you, and then you should be able to work on your KPIs. Thanks, Ashna, for adding this.
Appreciate. Thank you. That was very clear. Thank you.
Can I have a question. This is Srinivas.
Yes, please.
My question was, the survey form we just filled had a lot of questions on trees, but no, there are plants also. For example, the kind of work that we do is related to, let's say, horticulture plants or floriculture plants. It could be a barren land planted with, let's say, broccoli or a lily or an apple tree. So it could be a combination of plants and trees, not just trees in that sense. So I mean, afforestation or degradation could also be avoided by plants, I guess. So is that a fair, let's say, comment to make in terms of replacing trees with plants? Because I assumed plants in my case and filled the survey form accordingly.
So as you said that you are also planting flowers along with trees. So do you want to, I couldn't get your question well. Are you saying that whether afforestation or forestation is one of your suitable KPIs?
Yeah, I'm saying when I'm enabling, let's say, floriculture farmers who are planting some shrubs. Let's say lilies are not trees, right? And they're shrubs. I mean, they as part of our exercise, or let's say broccoli, or I mean trees. Of course, we are doing some intervention, the apple and pine trees and so on. But a lot of work that we're doing are related to horticulture, floriculture kind of clusters. Now, these are
Okay,
plants; these
got
are
it.
not trees, but they're also helping the degradation, avoiding the land degradation to a significant effect.
You can always say restoring the land through planting horticulture and floriculture crops. And I would suggest you, if you can do a study around how these different floriculture and horticulture based crops are impacting the soil. Like I said, measuring the soil carbon or avoiding the soil erosion or increasing the water retention capacity. So these can be few of your core KPIs, and also because you are growing flower crops, so you are definitely going to increase the insect population, the bees, the other insects that are helping in pollination. So definitely it is going to increase or enhance the biodiversity, the flora and the fauna. So you have to think of the other externalities as well. Rather than saying you are going for tree plantation, you should always be, as I said, you should be focusing on creating transparent market. So just keep on saying that you are planting for horticulture and say floriculture related crops.
Yes, and
Yeah, thanks.
some things, just to add on to that, some things are a mixture of numbers and stories. So for instance, anything that's not a monocrop is something to be celebrated, because you're bringing not only biodiversity on the farm, but you're bringing diversity in the crops that are there. So it's bringing more food stability to the folks who might be farming it. So, you can talk about on your website at some point that it's a mixed farming system and that you're planting these specific plants, and here's the benefits of it. So at that point, the numbers are, hey, we're planting 5 different plants, a couple of trees, 3 different crops. And the benefits are that we're diversifying our income stream. We're making ourselves resilient to pests. If we only grew 1 crop on our land, something could knock us out. So just sharing that. But again, you can also think, who cares about this and why? A story from one of our cohort members last year, whose name is Major VP Sharma, who started, I'm forgetting the name of his company right now, and that's horrible. Shout it out, Kavita, if you can. But what's his company called again?
Gratitude Farm.
Oh yeah, Gratitude Farms.
Yeah.
Yes, Gratitude Farms. So he has a whole mixed farming system, and something that happened to him was there was a cyclone over in his area of India in Pondicherry, and I believe his farm was one of the few farms that survived. So if you're looking to get investors, you can tell a story like that. Even if it's not your farm, you can say, listen, we're using a similar model. This model in Pondicherry survived a cyclone. You can take case studies from other places and show how it's replicable.
Yeah, and he has before and after pictures. He showed it to me. That was reflecting the climate resilience of the high density food forest model that he's practicing. So while the adjoining and other farms in his area were badly affected, the produce and the trees and the crops on his food forest model on his farms, they were least impacted. And that was a very practical evidence of how this high density planting is bringing in climate resilience and is not affecting the harvest, which in turn is providing farmers an assurance of getting the right price for their crops, even if there are certain climate related adversities. So these kind of examples are also there.
Yeah, my point was more on the survey form itself. It only says trees. It does not say trees / crops / plants. It says just trees. The survey form we just filled. So maybe that needs a bit of modification.
Yeah, so that is to give you awareness, and when you are developing KPIs for yourself, just add the other crops as well.
Yeah, thanks.
I had a question in case we have time. I just want to ask, so we're at an early stage of our organization where we're still conceptualizing our business plan and all through this through this process, and I was wondering, we're setting up our targets right now, and I was thinking, should we be setting up our KPIs in tandem with our targets? And if so, do you have any advice of how we should be thinking of both of them together?
Of course, your targets would definitely come in picture, but try to align and identify your KPIs with your larger objectives, and then narrowing it down to your immediate targets or the long-term priorities, whatever you want to identify. If you have a clear vision about how you are going to build up your business, then you can even identify KPIs related to your larger long-term goals. Otherwise, it's good to align and make KPIs which are more focused on the short-term interventions and which are verifiable and measurable.
Okay, thanks.
Well, I see we have about 2 more minutes, and our next speaker has joined us. So thanks so much, Looney. We'll be excited to hear from you in a couple minutes. Kavita, would you want us to share any quick tips about the mentorship that's upcoming?
Yeah, sure. So as we had said, we are going to organize mentorship calls for the top 30 companies that we have with us. So we are happy to share with you that we have identified a plan where we are going to organize mentorship calls every evening, 4 days a week, excluding Wednesdays. And from next week, from 31st of August, we are organizing 2 mentorship calls every evening, back to back from 6 to 7:30, where two of the top 30 companies amongst you would be presenting 45 minutes each back to back. First one from 6 to 6:45 p.m. and other one from 6:45 to 7:30. So we would be sharing the sequence of your presentation with you, and we are going to upload it on Mighty Networks as well. And we request all of you to kindly cooperate in this intervention, because it is very much difficult otherwise to look for everybody's time and arrange calls as per mutual availability. So we have reached out to our
Kavita, I accidentally hit mute to you. I meant to mute myself, so sorry.
Okay, no worries. So yes, we would be sharing the sequence and structure of the calls, where 2 of the top 30 companies would be presenting every evening. Make sure you are available for doing the presentation and presenting before a group of 4 mentors. Largely, we are keeping it, we are trying to keep the calls more focused. So we are allowing 4 mentors to join over a call. Say one of you is presenting, so then you will find 4 mentors on that call in a 45-minute session. And these mentors, they would be interacting with you, would be asking questions from you to make clear, to get themselves acquainted with what you are doing and what is your ask from them. So we would be sharing with you some tips that you should include in your presentation deck, or you should be communicating to the mentors. And once we finish these calls, based upon the mentor's interest and your ask, we would be able to associate you with a mentor, and then you would be getting 2 months time to interact with these mentors over phone calls or any other mode that is convenient to your mentor as well as you. So this is largely the plan. And as Amanda is simultaneously sharing her screen, so this is the spreadsheet where the mentors would be signing up for your companies. And the PDF of the sequence of calls is already updated on Mighty Networks also. So please look for the dates where you are required to present. This is all from my side. And if you have any questions, we are happy to take them regarding the mentorship. But don't get confused, or it is very much simple. You need to just check the dates when you have to present in a 45 minutes call. 4 mentors would be attending the call, and based upon your requirement and the expertise of the mentee, post these calls, you would get attached to a mentor and you can start your mentorship calls with them. by the end of September till the mid of November. So this is largely the plan. And I think Looney is here, and we should now start the next session. So Amanda, over to you for introducing Looney with us.
Oh, perfect. Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. Well, I don't think there's too much to say, except for I was lucky enough to meet Looney through the Land Accelerator when I first joined. Thanks for sharing your screen in September 2019. And anyone could tell you, and you're about to see, he is one of the most useful presenters that will get you to think differently about your business and really make an impact in the way you present yourself and in the way people can perceive your business based on some of the observations he's going to share with us today. So I'd rather have Looney introduce himself because, as I said, he's one of the most charismatic people I know. And he usually is working with us on the Land Accelerator Africa. But since we were going virtual this year, I asked him if he could come be a guest speaker with us here for our South Asia cohort. So we're really excited to have him and really glad for everyone who's joined us today to have a look at this. And without further ado, go ahead, please, Looney.
Oh, you're on mute, Looney.
All right, sorry about that. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Kavita. Everyone's been sitting for a while. While I do my bio, stand up. Everybody stand up and stretch for a little bit. And I can't see if you're doing it, but please do it anyway. I can't see the chat window either, so Amanda, just chime in if something's on there.
Will do.
Hi, my name is Looney. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm like you. I start companies. The only difference is I started my first company in 1992 before some of you were born. So I spent 20 years starting software companies. I did that all here in Seattle on the other side of the planet. Some of those were backed by venture capitalists in California, like real venture capitalists. And then I made a big transition in 2012. I discovered a business school. I started teaching there. I started teaching what I knew about entrepreneurship to others. That turned into Fledge. Fledge turned into Africa Eats. And I started some other things along the way as well. And Fledge is still around. Fledge just grew a new part called Africa Eats. Fledge is a global network of impact-oriented business accelerators. The Land Accelerator is one of our partners in this network. But we run programs all around the world. We have worked with companies in dozens and dozens of countries. I need to update the map to cover all of them. And we're here to try and make you guys better. So today we're going to talk about pitching. Right? Today specifically, we're going to talk about how to pitch your idea, how to pitch your company. And this comes from a book I wrote. I wrote a whole series of books for entrepreneurs. You can find, someone will throw it in the chat window. Find the link to the books online. Some of them you can read for free. Some of them you got to go buy on Amazon. This one's one you got to go buy, but I'm going to tell you most of what's in the book. All right. In terms of pitching, the bar has been set by this guy. The bar of what the best pitch possible can be has been set by Steve Jobs over and over and over again, not just once. He is by far the best salesperson that we've seen in public on a stage. And you should watch his videos and learn from them. Right? And people take the wrong lessons from him. When you see what he presented on stage, you'll notice things to notice. No words behind him most of the time, just pictures. The slides that are being shown are supporting what he's saying. They're not the main content. They're just the supporting content. When he's talking about something important, like a big number, what's on the screen is a big number with just a little bit of text, not even a whole sentence, just a little bit of text to tell you what the number is. Interesting pictures. This is one of the famous quotes where Apple is the intersection between technology and liberal arts. And if you don't recognize it, this style of sign here is the style of street sign in San Francisco, which is the nearest city well, actually it's the second nearest city. It's the nearest known city to where Apple's based. The only time you'll see slides full of words is these slides, which is basically bullet points. And again, notice there's no sentences here. There's just a few words, as few words as possible. and he would go down and spend 3 or 4 minutes describing, these key points. But mostly it was just pictures. Mostly he's just showing off what he's selling. And yes, he's selling products. And when we talk about pitching, we're generally talking about pitching your company. But pitching your company is selling your company. The product is your company. Okay, so what made these so great? They were simple as possible. He took out as much as possible in order to make them more compelling. He said as few words as possible. Watch these videos and notice how often he stops speaking. And he doesn't just stop speaking because they're clapping because there's a bunch of fanboys in the audience who love Steve at Apple. He stops speaking because it gets the point across better. Pausing and not speaking is as important as speaking. And lastly, and most importantly, what you can't see when you watch these presentations is how much time he put into making them happen. So 3 months before the presentations is when he started putting together these presentations, and he worked on them over and over and over again. And I know this for 2 reasons. I know this is how he put these things together because one, the Apple, if you don't follow the company, built this giant new headquarters in their home city, their hometown. And in order to go and build anything in any town in the US, you have to go get permission by the city. And so Apple sent someone to go and pitch this idea to the city. And Apple's the biggest employer in that city. And so they weren't going to say no. But nonetheless, Apple sent Steve Jobs. And you can watch him present to the city council, and he's terrible. He is no better than anybody else. He's no better than a person off the street presenting an idea. He's just unprepared. He's not a good pitch. He's not a good pitch person. On stage, he's a great pitch person. I've also talked to the person who is the actual person who created all these slides. There is one person, his name's Wayne, and he's responsible for every slide you've ever seen Steve Jobs present. He was hired by Steve's previous company, Next, and then he got hired over to Apple. And so I had a little conversation with him about how these things were put together, and everything that I had assumed was true was actually true. All right. So that's the bar. That's what we're trying to get to. And let's come down from that bar and start with a real pitch deck from a real company, from a real fledgling in Africa. I'm going to present it as if I'm that person. All right. So I'm going to do my best here to present this idea. This is actually an idea from our company from like 2015. I've updated the numbers to be last year from the last time I updated this. All right. And it's not my company, so I'm not going to do a perfect job, but access to financial services is a fundamental human right. I say this because there's a huge number of people on the planet who are subsistence farmers who don't have access to financial services. In Africa, we call them the unbanked, right? There are hundreds of millions of Africans who are unbanked, including 28 million people in Uganda, including one I know really well, my mom. The solution that they have, the solution that these smallholder farmers have, are called savings and credit co-ops, or SACCOs. And the problem with saving and credit co-ops is that they run on paper. And between inefficiency and lack of education and corruption, a lot of money that's put into saving and credit co-ops disappears. Where does it go? Yeah, it doesn't really matter. It disappears. It's not an efficient system. And in addition, these organizations, they supply a place to go save money and a place to borrow money, and that's about it. So we have a better solution. We call it MOBIS, the Mobile Banking and Information Software. And what it is just a modern version of saving and credit, right, in the cloud. And we provide this to the SACCOs to run their system in the cloud. And then it's also connected to the mobile phones so that for the farmers, they now have access to their account on a mobile phone. And we solve the problems about corruption and ineptitude, because every time you make a deposit, you get a text message. And every time you want to check your balance, you can do that on your phone. And you don't have a track record to see which money you put in and which money you took out. And now it's more transparent. So for the SACCOs, they create more transparency, which creates more trust. It's much easier for them to run these systems, so it's more efficient. And on the farmer side, they get the transparency of their accounts. It becomes much more simple for them to act and use these services. It's all mobile now, and everybody in Uganda has, every adult has a phone, and there are new services that we can put onto the same system. So in terms of opportunity size, there are 5,000 SACCOs in Uganda. And if that's not big enough, across the border in Kenya, there are 300,000 more. They call them chamas over there. And there's 54 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, and they all have systems like this. So how do we make money? It's really simple. We charge $1,000 per year to the SACCOs, and then we charge a small transaction fee whenever the money's moved around on the system. In the first 9 months of this business, we have signed up 500 SACCOs. We have 40,000 farmers using the system. They have $500,000 in savings in our system, and they have $200,000 in active loans. It works, right? Proof that it works. So here we are. It's 2019, and we had, or last year, it was 2019. We had our first 40,000 farmers. This year in 2020, we expect 200,000 farmers. And by 2023, we expect that to grow tenfold. Just 2 million farmers. And again, there's 20 million farmers in Uganda. So there's plenty of space to grow. We got a great team. So my name's David Opio. Not going to try and pronounce my last name. I got a partner named Oteem Gerald. And then we have a team of 6 that help run this system, and they are well experienced in running software systems and financial systems. We're also endorsed by the government of Uganda. So there's a new law in Uganda that says that the SACCOs need to put their back end on the cloud, right, on a computer. And we are on the top of the list of organizations to implement that. We're raising $250,000 right now. We're doing that as an equity raise in a Series A with $1 million valuation. We have our first $75,000 committed, and we're going to use that money to build out some more services, healthcare savings and other types of savings, and use it for marketing and sales to go sign up those 5,000 SACCOs. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. All right, so that's what a pitch looks like, and that's, you know, I just did that in about 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and that's really all you got to present. There is an expectation for what's in that pitch. So one thing you might not understand yet as an early entrepreneur is that on the other side of the table, when you're talking to investors, they have an expectation of what you're going to show them. And this is more or less the list of topics that they're expecting. And if you skip any of these topics, they're going to notice. The order of the topics doesn't really matter. Usually it's problem first and ask last, but everything in between, you can move that around depending on what makes for the best story. All right, so let's walk through this one more time. And this time I'm going to go slide by slide by slide and tell you what should be on each slide, what you say on each slide, what the variations are, and so forth. So first and foremost, when you're doing these pitches and you're putting them together, keep in mind that each slide exists to tell just one part of your story. And I use the word story on purpose, and there's a whole other lesson I teach about storytelling, which we won't go into today. Stories are really compelling. So you're trying to put together a story. First and foremost, rule number 0, this isn't a pitch, it's a story you're telling. And rule 1 is use the slides to help move the story forward. Don't dwell on any one slide for too long. As you put together your slide deck, ask the question, what's the purpose of this slide? And if there's more than one answer, then you need more than one slide. And if you don't have a really compelling answer to why this slide exists, then you have an extra slide that you can remove. And the other way to tell when you have extra slides or too few slides is how long do you spend on any one slide. So if you just saw in my presentation there, the first few I went through really quickly. If you can't sit on that slide and tell a useful piece of the story for 15 seconds, like 10, 15 seconds, you don't need that slide. And if you sit on one slide for over 2 minutes, you need more than one slide. That's a simple rule of thumb. Okay, so here we are. it's slide 1. What we have on this slide is the name of the company, and you should take the time right now to make sure you have a good name. Right, this is your first impression that you're making to the audience, whether it's a sales pitch or an investor pitch. And I know naming is hard. Right? I have a whole other lesson on naming. But if you don't have a really good name right now, change it. There's no better time than changing it now. Only gets harder when you get bigger. Second thing on here is a logo. This logo is okay. It's not great because it doesn't really scream financial services, but it's interesting. And it's clean and it's neat. It looks like someone spent some time on this logo. And the last thing, or second to last thing on here, is a hint about what space are we in. So this is almost a full sentence. You don't need a full sentence. Could be 3 words, could be 1 word, just some hint about what we're about to see. You can't assume that the audience is going to read the blurb about who's presenting. Especially investors, they tend to be really lazy. They don't want to read. They just want to be entertained. Part of why they're it's an angel group. Part of why they're there is to be entertained. Personally, I like it when it's cold. I'm much more interested in a company I don't know anything about. And then lastly, on the bottom here is
I have a question. Any meaning to this name?
I have no memory of what it means.
Okay.
This is Uganda. There's like 18 languages spoken in Uganda.
Okay.
Lastly, on the bottom is your name, who's presenting, and some form of date. Doesn't have to be the exact date. It just needs to be a rough date. And the purpose of the date is so that later, when the investor said no, but later when you reapproach them, they go, oh yeah, or someone else approaches them. Yeah, I saw Nsambuko pitch. I don't remember when. And then they can go and look up the slide deck in their notes, and they go, oh yeah, I saw them pitch in the first quarter of 2020, right? Sometime early in 2020. All right, so that's it. So in terms of what should be on that first page, it's your logo, a hint, your name, and the date. What you should say when that pops up, what you should not say, which is what almost everybody does, is hello, my name is such and such, and thank you for letting me present. I'm going to show you Nsambuko today. Don't do any of that, right? As I said, Steve Jobs, he set the bar. The first words out of his mouth were not, hi, it's Steve again. I'm here to tell you a story. Like, you got to say something interesting. And I have a whole other lesson on that. But in this case, the opening line for Nsambuko is, access to financial services is a fundamental human right. It's a compelling and it's an interesting sentence, and it gives that hint about what this company's about, and it sets its own bar about it's going to be a little bit edgy. Edgy's good. And in terms of design, I said what's on that slide, but in terms of design, it needs to be simple, right? Mostly white space. All right, moving on to the next slide. This is the problem slide. So just keep in mind what you're seeing here. A few words at the top, 1 whole sentence, lots of pictures. What I like to see on a problem slide is an image, right? Usually 1 big image. Sometimes if there's 2 problems that are being solved, left and right of the screen, 2 images split in half. No more than 1 or 2 sentences, right? Ideally, it's just climate change or or access to financial service, unbanked, or poverty and hunger. My other company I've been pitching, it just has the UN SDG logo for hunger and poverty. That's all it has. There's no other words. If it's a well-known problem like climate change, then you can just say that. If it's a well-known problem like poverty, you don't have to put a sentence. You can literally just put the word poverty. You should spend as little time as you can talking about the problem. If it's an obscure problem that you're solving a problem in an industry that the audience doesn't know, then you're going to want to spend a little more time on it. But if you're solving a general, well-known problem, as you saw, I spent 10 seconds talking about it. And in terms of design, again, I like 1 big image. the simpler and more elegant you make the presentations, the more they look like Steve Jobs presentations, the smarter you look. And the more they're jumbled and full of text, it looks like you don't know what you're doing. All right, get to the third slide. And it may seem like this is still the problem slide. And in this case, they're kind of related, but really what this slide is trying to tell you is who's the customer? Who has this problem that we're talking about? And so in this case, it's specifically smallholder farmers in Africa, the unbanked smallholder farmers in Africa. So who has this problem? And ideally, we're talking about a real person. So unfortunately, we can talk about the realities of funding, but the realities of these days here in the 2020s is that investors do not invest in ideas anymore. Right? Occasionally, you'll find one that does, but 99 out of 100 or 999 out of 1,000 will only invest in a company that has customers. So you have to go get your own customers first before you go pitch for investors. And then you can tell them about those customers. Right? That's who they want to hear about. They want to hear proof that the problem you're solving has a solution. We haven't got there yet, but they'll want to believe you have a solution. And the proof that you have a solution that people care about is that you have customers. Now, if you don't have any customers, you have no paying customers, your first customers aren't the customers you're aiming for, well, then you can make up a persona. And a persona is just a fake person. And sometimes it's best to make up 3. Maybe you're targeting 3 customer segments. And so you need to talk about 3 different types of customers. And you can do that in 3 slides. You can do that in 1 slide. But you need to talk about who has this problem. And really what you're talking about is you're trying to make this a story, and stories have characters in them. And so these are the characters that are in your story. And ideally, which this pitch doesn't do, but ideally, these characters continue to be talked about throughout the rest of the pitch. Right? And again, real people work better than just talking in general. And in terms of design, again, I like images. So picture of that customer. If it's not really your customer, you can go online and just find a stock footage that doesn't quite look like stock footage. Try and make it authentic. And again, simple and elegant. And then this last bullet point is that you want the same format for every slide. So I like wall-to-wall. Let's go back a second. I like wall-to-wall images. So the format of this particular pitch deck is images go from edge to edge. That looks better than having white space on the sides. Text at the top or the bottom, or in this case, both. And then one more trick I'm using in this particular pitch deck is black background, which presents really well. It's really pretty to see black backgrounds on a big screen. And then it switches over to white backgrounds when we get to the solution. It's the only pitch deck I've ever done like that. Okay, and then we get one more slide that's, again, seems like a problem slide, but it's not. And this, again, the picture's grainy because this is the only picture we could find online that looked anything like a Sacco. But this is the best picture we found. We made it wall to wall, and the graininess is fine. And what we're showing here is one of 2 things. I said the stuff in the middle can be variable. So in this particular version, we're showing the wrong solution. We're showing what exists today so that we can contrast it in a minute with what we're bringing to the market. The other thing to show instead of that would be a trend. And so there's been a whole bunch of research on what makes companies succeed. By far, the number 1 factor in success is timing. And therefore, what makes a good, compelling pitch is to show that there's a trend and that you're jumping into this early. You're early on the trend and you're going to ride this trend up. So that's one way to do it. And if you're doing that, something that's graph-like or something that's timeline-like, or something that's building that you can visually show. But in this case, we're just showing a wrong solution. And again, what we're trying to convey to the audience is that the customers need a different solution. They're not happy with the solutions that exist today. In terms of design, just keep it consistent. Finally, we get to the solution. We're on 5 slides in, but we're only about 45 seconds into the pitch, or 35 seconds into this 3-minute pitch. If you're doing a 10-minute pitch, it may be a minute on the problem before you get to the solution. People want to hear much more about the solution than the problem, And yet I have seen many, 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 many pitches, which is 90% problem and 10% solution. That's backwards. Okay, so we got the solution slide, and here's your first impression. This is the first chance that your audience has to see how you're solving this problem. Okay? First chance to see your product or your service. First slide that you're going to show is going to be as simple as possible. I have seen another mistake, which is that the slide is then just full of text and bullet points and screenshots, and it's just a mess. Okay, start simple. One slide, in this case, it's just 2 pictures, and we're not even showing the actual solution. We're just showing, that it's on the cloud, and therefore we found a picture of a group of people with a computer, and we found a farmer looking at his phone. These are just pictures off the internet. This is not real customers. All right, so in this slide, what you're going to say is just really high level. Here's what we do at a high level. Here's what we do. Here's why it's important. Not too much details, and definitely not features. This is not the point to talk about where it's got 2 doors and rear view mirrors and it's shiny and it's got buttons. We don't care about that yet. We'll get to that later. Ideally, if it's a physical product, we just want to see the screenshot of that. We don't see the physical product, right? Pretty picture of your product. If it's a service like this one, that's why we use those 2 pictures. So now we're looking at what the service would look like if we were watching the people use it. And if you noticed, right, that was a happy looking farmer. He wasn't like smiling, fake smile. He was contently looking at his phone, right? Happiness is an important design element. Then you have a slide that goes 1 level deeper, right? So ideally, this would be screenshots. So ideally, we would again split the screen in half, and we would show what that screen looked like for the Sockos, or 2 or 3 screen for the Sockos, on top of each other, and then show a few screens off of the mobile phone for the farmer. But in fact, this presentation was put together before we really had anything that looked good, so we skipped that, and instead we're just showing some benefits. These are not the most compelling benefits, but it does the job. Okay, and this is slide 6. You can have slide 6A and 6B and 6C, and you can go 3 or 4 levels deep into your product to slowly unwrap and show how compelling it really is. That's totally fine. Going overboard in the details of your solution is fine. Going overboard into the problem is a problem. So again, what you're going to talk about is more of how it works. And then keep in mind, you don't need 5 slides you don't usually need 5 slides for solution, because the point of the pitch is not to provide every detail that describes everything that this business does, every little last detail of your company. The point of the pitch is to start a conversation so that the audience is asking questions, so that eventually they get comfortable enough to write you a check. That's the point of pitching, right? Whether it's an investor or a customer, you want them to get to a check. And you don't do that by just presenting to them and speaking without having them speak back. So the trick is to bring forth just enough information that makes them have some questions, and then stop presenting more information and just answer their questions. Right? In terms of design, again, screenshots, physical images of products. If it's a complicated service, make a diagram, make a simple diagram, simplify the system if you have to, but make a diagram so they can see how it all fits together. And again, 1 or 2 more slides if you need it, and only if you need it. Okay, moving on, we get to this slide, the big number slide. So this is the opportunity slide. Sometimes this comes a little sooner. Sometimes this is the buildup, like the trend and then the opportunity and then the solution. Sometimes it's the financial model and then the opportunity, but in this particular pitch, this seemed like the good place to put it. So what we're going to show on this slide is a big number, literally a big number. This is a 100-point type. And 5,000 wasn't a big enough number. So ideally, if this were 50,000 Sockos in Uganda, that's all we would say. 50,000, big type, Sockos in Uganda. But we only have 5,000 potential customers, and therefore we needed a bigger number. And so we just grabbed the number from Kenya, which is a bigger number. Physically, on the screen, it's a smaller number. Like physically, the font size is smaller because we're a Ugandan company, but it's a bigger number in terms of zeros. So we put that on the screen there. And you want to just explain how you got to this number. In this case, it's really simple. There's 5,000 SACOs. But if we wanted to talk about, if we were selling a service to farmers, we might break it down top down, which is there's 46 million people, 44 million people in Uganda. Half of them are adults, or half of them are kids, therefore half of them are adults. And 80% of them are farmers, and therefore there are whatever that number is in farmers. That's what I mean by top-down analysis. And in terms of design, again, big number, small amount of text to tell us what the number is. Okay, now we move on to the business model. This is one that a lot of companies forget to present. How do you make money? The audience would like to know if it's an investor pitch. If it's a sales pitch, they want to know what they're going to pay. But if it's an investor pitch, the audience needs to know, how do you make money? Who do you charge? About how much do you charge? It doesn't have to be precise. About how much do you charge? How often do they pay? How do they pay? And so in this case, we have a two-sided model here. And so we had two numbers on the screen. But basically, and even if you have like a complicated business with a small, medium, and large purchase, right? You got monthly fees, or you got different levels. You got the pro level or the free level or whatnot. Just simplify it down. Just we don't need to know all those details. We just need to know roughly. People pay us on a monthly basis. People pay us once a year. People subscribe to the service. We need to know what that is, and we need to know roughly how much they pay. And in terms of talking points, that's really all you're going to explain, right? The audience needs to understand the answer to how do you make money. Right? And again, the more detailed you give, the less questions you get. And you want questions, so don't give all the details. All right, I already showed you that. Oh, if you have one of those, if you're a SaaS business and you have one of those online small, medium, large purchase things where, the one in the middle is what you want people to buy. Yeah, just take a screenshot, put that on your in your slides, maybe clean it up to make it fit, but just use that. Okay, then we get to one of the most important slides here. This is called the traction slide. And so in this particular business, we used 4 numbers. It could be 1 number, it could be 2 numbers, 3 numbers, not more than 4 or 5, please. One is better, actually. What we want to show off here is that this company has customers, that the people care about this solution. And so we're giving proof that people care by showing key performance indicators. I heard KPIs when I joined in. This is incredibly important because investors these days need to see these numbers before they'll invest. Something around it, something that's proof that what you have is wanted by the market. Right. So what you have to say is the proof. You have to tell them stories about how this is working. And that's basically what I said. I said, this is working. And I said, we have 500 SACOs signed up. In terms of design, again, numbers are good. If you have sales numbers are even better. If you have monthly sales numbers and they keep growing, you could have one or two that go down, but if they're generally growing, just show those, right? And in that case, you just revenues, blah, 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 put a number on the left side, and you're done with the design. It can be as simple as that. If it's just, we have 10 customers, big 10, we have 10 in 400 point font customers. Then we're showing on the next slide, normally most organizations, in the typical way I would see this slide would be a graph from Excel showing future revenues. But in this case, in this particular company, and this was true back when they were at Fledge, they had done $50,000 in revenue before they showed up, before we had invited them to our accelerator. And so we want to show that off. If you have revenues in the near past, you want to show that. And so this is a financial history and projection slide. And again, I updated this for 2020. So we're off by a year. So just assume it said first half of 2020, then 2021 is what we're aiming for, and then 2024. This is a format that I've used many, many times before. Simplify it down, right? So this is not an accurate curve, right? The hockey stick would be steeper if we were showing this on an Excel diagram. We simply show one data point in the past. We're showing where we think we're going to be this year by the end of the year. And then we're just picking a time in the future when it's a big number. Usually that third one is $1 million. $1 million is a nice round milestone for American companies. We literally use $1 million US when we pitch companies in Africa. It's just a nice round number. Most of the investors are not from Africa, they're from the US or Europe. The Europeans are investing in dollars as well. Everybody likes $1 million. So we usually do $1 million. This company, we bucked that trend because this way it's 10x. It grew by 10x in this presentation. So we go from 250,000 to 2.5 million, and we do it in 3 years. That's believable. That's doable given the number of farmers that we have access to, and the size of this market, and the fact that we haven't talked about competition yet, but the fact that there was no competition when this company got launched. So we want to know where does that traction go? How long does it take until you're break even? So if you're not cash flow break even now, you have to show that somehow on that slide. And usually that's, again, a screenshot of a graph from Excel showing revenues, expenses, and net. So the net showing where you break even. Usually it's just 3 or 5 years. In this case, we were aiming for a specific milestone. But in the tech world, the norm is 3 or 5 years, not 4. And again, you're just going to talk about where this is going. And I presented this just by saying what the numbers are. And I talked about the design already. All right. So then we get to the great team slide. And literally, that's what I said. I'll get to that in a second. Team slide should be pictures. You can put a little more text on here if you want. We don't know who these people's names are in this particular case. And you know what? The audience doesn't really care. That's why I left it out on this slide. We want to know who's the CEO, who are the other co-founders. We want to know that there is a team. We want to see that they're happy people. Smiling is better. This guy does not look good. Right? He looks fine. He's kind of smiling. This guy, he's too serious. He really needs to smile. But the pictures are good. Everyone kind of has, most of them have the same background. They're well-lit pictures. Not the best. Like she looks a little bit warped. Like that picture is not quite the right shape. He's a little bit too close in. The reason is the only picture we had of him was like a group of people. So that's just his head taken in that group photo. Whereas David's nice and big and smiling. CEO's bigger picture. A lot of CEOs have lack of ego problems. CEO's a bigger picture. Sorry to tell you. People are betting on the team. Investors are betting on the team. They're betting on the CEO. CEO needs to stand out. Okay, so investors, if you ask them what they invest in, they'll say it's team and then team and then team. So you got to show off the team. But again, you don't have to show them off in terms of like every name and every title and what everybody does, because the investors are not going to read all that text. If your team has experience with well-known branded companies, put those logos on that screen. Put the logos of all the companies they've worked for somewhere on the bottom of the screen, just running a running area of logos, and say, hey, and our people, they have amazing experience. They worked at places like KPMG and Tata and so forth. All right. This is where you introduce yourself. So I said that you don't introduce yourself at the beginning. And sorry to tell you, but the investors, they really don't care who you are until you convince them that what you have is important, right, and interesting. Then they'll want to know who you are. And so this is where you introduce. On stage, we'll do, ladies and gentlemen, my name is David Opio. I'm the founder CEO of Ensembuco. Typically, what people say when they're doing this in an angel group setting or an angel setting is literally they'll say, we have a great team. That is the cliche line on this slide. And you don't have to dwell on this. They just have to know there's a great team and move on, and they'll ask about the team later if they want to know more. Right, and I already talked about that. In terms of advisors, if you have a bunch of advisors, unless they are famous people, we just want to know you have them. We don't really care who they are. Like their names would be fine, but I've never seen a slide with advisors where I actually knew the people, except when it's me and my name, right? But it's still, well, it's one of those things that's done. And if you have a lot of advisors, put that on the next slide, right? Just have a slide for your team and a slide for advisors, or in this case, we have this extra slide here, which is really powerful. Like this company literally was endorsed by the government of Uganda. We were on this list that said, go talk to Nsumbuko. Didn't really work that well. In real life, yeah, there was a reason why the government tried to pass the law, because people weren't doing this. The law didn't actually get everybody to sign up. Usually what this slide will have instead of this will be a list of logos of organizations that have backed you, your partners. So the Land Accelerator logo, the WRI logo, any other organizations that have provided you help or money will go on that slide. And that's a good place to also put your advisors. So maybe the top half of the slide is advisors and the bottom half is endorsements. And if it's a really long list, you can do 2 separate slides for that. But if you've won business plan competitions, that goes in this slide as well. If anything you've won, it could be news articles if that's all you have. So headlines cut off the internet. This is where you want to show that other people care about what you're doing, because investors like to follow others. And so this is proof that other people care, and they should too. And then what you say about it is not much. You can just say, hey, we've been in the news a few times. We've won some contests, or we got some grants, or we were invited into this business accelerator, and then move on, because it's not the most important thing to talk about. Right? And logos is much better than anything else. So just fill the screen with pretty logos. All right, finally we get to the end, which is the ask, or the last important slide in the deck is the ask. And this is going to be a big number. Again, another slide with the number is the most important thing. We're going to use the word raising, which is not on this slide, but usually we're going to say we are raising and then a number. And the 2 things you need to explain based on that raise is, what's the form of the investment? Are you raising equity or debt, or a convertible note, or SAFE? Like, what's the form of the investment? Ideally, you want to say that there's already money that's committed, because again, investors like to follow. So you don't want to ask for the first dollar. It's really hard to ask for the first dollar. So hopefully you have some money committed. In this case, this could be how much money has been already invested in the company if you have nothing committed in this round. And then on the other side of the slide, or somewhere else on the slide, you're going to explain what you're going to do with the money. No more than 5 bullets on that. We're going to do it on this. And marketing and sales is kind of a catch-all. You got to end in an ask. If you're not raising money, I don't know why you're pitching, but if you're not raising money, ask for something else. The key word is we are raising. Makes it sound like you're actually doing it. And again, as few words as possible on the slide, not out of your mouth, but on the slide. And then we get to the actual last slide of the pitch deck. And all this is, you're just going to take the opening slide, the title slide, you're going to make a copy, you're going to put it in the back of the deck. You're going to take out everything else that I told you to put on that slide, and you're going to put contact information. And that's it. You can put the word thank you if you want. You can put the word questions if you want. But the best closing slides is just something that resembles that opening slide. Okay. And the word, what I mean by closing line, which I didn't do in this case, but ideally, you're going to fret over what your first sentence is. You're going to work on that, for days. You're going to work on what your first sentence is. And then you're going to actually, once you have a first sentence you like, you're going to create a closing line that mirrors the opening line. And it might be exactly the same words, or it might be a play on those words. But you're going to bookend your presentation with a great opening line and a way to close the presentation down, as opposed to just petering out and saying, thank you, to have any questions. And if you're in a presentation where they give you Q&A, where they tell you it's 5-minute presentation, 5-minute Q&A, or 10 and 10, or 15-15, you're going to save the closing line until the end of the questions. And when they say 1 minute or one more question, you're going to answer that question. And before you stop speaking, you're going to say, and thank you thank you for having me present today, and then state your closing line, and then walk off the stage. That's much more compelling, makes you look much more professional than everybody else. You want to stand out. You're competing against everyone else presenting that day. and everyone else those investors have seen for the last month. All right, so I already talked about that. And then I did mention we didn't talk about competition, and it's expected. It's expected that there's a competition slide in your presentation. The reason why it's not in this presentation is twofold. One, we only gave, this is from demo day at Fledge, and we only give them 5 minutes, and there isn't time to do everything in 5 minutes. And so we skipped it. And secondly, when you're in the presentation style of you have 10 minutes to present and 10 minutes of Q&A, what I teach my entrepreneurs is purposely skip something. Take out the business model, take out the competition, take out something that's not the traction slide, because they won't ask you about that. But take out something like competition, because then you know what the first question is. What's your competition look like? And so I don't have any competition slides for this company. This is for a different company. There are 2 ways to present competition. I've seen a few others, but there are 2 ways you should present competition. One is the magic square, and the magic square is 2 benefits, and your company is the top right corner, not in the middle, not in the lower right corner. You are the top right corner if you're using this format, and no one else is in the top right corner. And you can have named competitors, and you can have other whole categories you're competing against, but you're the only one that's up here in the top right. So you have to pick these two axes so that you're in the top right. That's the way this is done. If you do it another way, you will confuse your investors, and you lower your chances of getting an investment. And the other way to do this is a competitive matrix. In the competitive matrix, there's lots of ways of presenting this, all of them equally valid, except the expectation is you are the leftmost column, and that's where the investors are going to look for you. And if you don't have competitors in columns, if you put them in the rows with the benefits in the columns, they're going to get confused, and it's going to take them a few seconds to figure that out. And if you put yourself somewhere else besides the leftmost column, they're going to get confused. So don't confuse your audience. Just put yourself in the leftmost column. Pick 5 or 6 or 7 things that you're competing on, and don't show them all checked off. If you show them all checked off, then the whole point of this slide is wasted. They won't believe a single thing you say on the slide, and you've actually set off a yellow flag that you don't know what you're doing. Okay, so the point of this slide, the competition slide, and you just have to do one or the other. You don't have to do both of these. Pick one or the other. The point is that you know your competition. That's it. You're just proof that you've actually done a competitive analysis. And what you say when you present these is not everything that's shown on that screen. You're just going to pick, I say 3 or 5, but 2 or 3 interesting factoids about what's being presented, and then just present those. And there's other information on the screen, and you're going to ignore that fact that there's other information on the screen, and you're just going to move on. And that's fine, because then if there's something else that pops up that someone in the audience is interested in, they'll ask you about it, and then you will be able to answer it because you've done your competitive analysis. And again, there's just 2 choices. And that's it. So that is the expected pitch deck. And you can see here, we're kind of sticking competition around opportunity size in the general scheme of things. There's also a topic here called uniqueness. This is important for tech companies to show what their secret sauce is. Usually you can get away with it inside the competition slide. You usually don't need a separate slide for that. Now that was really fast. If you want to see this again in another form besides the video that they'll share from you at the Land Accelerator, I'm actually presenting this in my podcast. So there's a new page on my website. My website is lunarmobiscuit.com. That's where you'll find my books under the next step. There's a ton of advice there. A lot of it's repeated in audio form in my podcast, if you like that better. And then there's a blog with, I don't know, 1,000 posts over the last 10 years. A lot of advice for entrepreneurs. And then there's this is my latest blog post, and it's the pieces of the pitch, the pieces of the podcast talking about pitching. And it's based on the same deck, going slide by slide. And with that, I will open it up to questions.
Thank you so much, Looney. Great presentation per usual. I hope that people here do have questions, so I don't want to spend too much time talking. So if you've got questions, you can unmute yourself or raise your hand and we'll call on you. It could be anything. It could be any ideas that came up during this or anything that you've been doing in your pitches that you might want to change. Any comments? So looking forward to anybody.
Hello.
Hi.
Yes, please go ahead. Is that Dr. Madhurita Gupta?
Yeah. Hello, Mr. Looney. That was a very nice and very informative presentation. My question is, if we have n number of products, so do we mention that in the presentation as well in the deck? And if we are creating a social and environmental impact along with the sales and the revenue, so do we mention that too?
Yeah, so if your impact, the companies I work with, their impact is embedded in the product or service. So we don't make a separate slide talking about the impact. We talk about that impact in the problem statement. So it's really obvious that's where the impact is going to be. And it's obvious that the solution is solving that system. If yours is not like that, where the impact is an add-on, then yeah, add another slide that explains your impact.
Thank you.
Hey, Looney, this is Ankit speaking. I have a question.
Mhm.
It was a great presentation. I really enjoyed that. A lot of my problems and the questions that I had were solved by your presentation. Thanks for that. So my question basically is, I'm working with cannabis hemp, and right now we're more focused on not creating the products, but creating a policy with the government. And there's a lot of things which will go around the research and development and cultivation. This is something that does not even exist right now, but it's in the process, in the pipeline. So at this point of a stage in a startup, how would you, put a lot of indicators and numbers when the industry is not even there, but it's emerging, and you want to pitch into the investors, gaining the trust that, this solves a lot of state constraints and problems?
Yeah, so cannabis hemp exists elsewhere in the world, so go get numbers from elsewhere in the world.
Right,
so,
right.
Again, I like what I didn't talk about this. All slides should be widescreen now, 16 by 9, which they used to be, the TV shape. And the nice part about 16 by 9 is there's space for 2 things to be presented side by side. And so go find the equivalent market somewhere else in the world and put that on the left side of the screen. And then whatever country you're doing this for, do the calculations and show what that would be in that country on the right. So all on one screen. Here's what exists. Here's what it would look like in this country. Let's make it happen.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of complexities as well. I would love to connect with you later and talk more. Thank you so much.
Hi, Looney.
Question. Oh, I'm so sorry. I had a question in the chat box. Oh, from Vikas. Is that you speaking? So Vika's question was, how can the pitch deck look if you have more than one product or service, or if you're addressing more than one problem in different verticals?
You can use the rule of 3. So there's a rule in marketing called the rule of 3. So presenting 1 is compelling. Presenting 3 is compelling, because presenting any 2s is not compelling. 2s and 4s are not as good, and 5 is too many. So if you have three problems you're solving and 3 solutions to it, then literally split the screen into 3 parts. Show your problem slide has three related problems. Hopefully they're related, and your solution slide has three columns that match the 3 problems you showed. Or if one of them is going to be 80% of your business, just pitch that and just ignore the rest.
Great response, Looney. And I want to draw everyone's attention to the chat box for our attendance sheet. So please take a look at that, and then we can take the next question. I believe there was somebody ready to go.
Yeah. Hi, this is Ashwini. Wonderful session. Thanks a lot for all your inputs. My question is on, should we mention our milestones in these decks? Question 2 is on the traction. If there is no sale, do we put inquiry from the customers during our pilot launch or something like that can be put in the traction?
Okay, so there's 2 questions there. All right, so I'll do them backwards order. So if all your traction is followers on Facebook or page views or whatnot, that's the best you have. That's what you show. Those what we would call vanity metrics. You can't run your company on page views. You can only run your company on revenues. But if you don't have it, show what you have. It's not gonna unlikely to get you an investment. But if it's I said if you had monthly revenues that were growing up and to the right, well, if you have monthly page views that are growing up and to the right, like showing that people are more and more interested, I would present it that way, as opposed to just we have 2 million page views since we launched. I would show the growth. Growth is what's important, right? Growth.
Yeah, but we are looking at smallholder farmers. We interact with I mean nothing online. So we've just met them during our
we here's the number of farmers we worked with in the last few months: 5, 10, 50, 400.
Oh.
It shows a trend. It shows a growth trend. Right. It shows that someone care. More and more people care enough that they'll at least listen to you. But again, it's unlikely to get you an investment unless you show that people want to pay you. And then your other question was, what about milestones? Yeah, so it's not uncommon in a pitch deck to have a slide somewhere near the end that says what's coming next. So it could be, here's the financial model, and then the next slide after that is, here's our roadmap to get there. That's not an uncommon slide to throw in there. What I'm showing you is the minimum slide deck. People do add other things to the story to make it more compelling. But the one problem I've seen in that roadmap slide deck, especially on a first time ever pitch deck, is I just want to see that customers have what you have now. Yes, it's important to see where it's going in the future, but if nobody's buying now what you have now, it doesn't really matter what you're planning on doing in the next 3 years, because you're not going to get there unless you get customers now.
Okay. What I thought was like with the ask, if that has to there has to be some supporting info along with the ask. I'm going to do this next, and for which I need funds.
Yeah, I understand. There's a catch-22. So the beginning of life here in your companies, you need money to go get those customers. But investors, again, 999 out of 1,000 investors will not give you that money. They will tell you, okay, come back when you have those customers. And you're going to sit there going, but I can't go get those customers because I need money. And they'll say, that's nice, but that's your problem, right? It's not my problem as an investor that you need money. It's your problem that you need money. Go get customers, and then I'll have the belief that I can give you the money and won't get lost. That's just the way that investing works these days. It wasn't always true, but it's true now, and you have to live with it.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
There was a direct message in here. I'll do 2 more, Amanda, and then we'll let them go. Somebody's asking about the moringa plantation, and I just want to answer this one to the whole group. There are business models like moringa. Amanda and I were talking about moringa last week on the Africa Accelerator. Moringa, somebody said hemp. There's a whole bunch of these, let's call them super crops, whether it's superfoods or super crops. There's a whole bunch of these businesses out there where I have seen as an investor over and over and over again the same business plan being presented. And I have never seen a company that has succeeded in growing based on these super crops. And so one of the challenges you have is you may be super excited. I'll just pick on hemp. Sorry, Ankit. You think hemp is the next big thing in the world, or the old big thing that needs to be brought back. But the world is not agreeing with you at the moment. Moringa, it's a superfood. It's got great nutritional value. But you know what? I don't think I've ever eaten moringa in my life. And I can eat anything I want. I'm a rich American. I can buy anything I want, and it's not moringa. And so one thing that you need to do is not just present the same story every other moringa or hemp company or whatnot has presented before. You need to find a way to stand out and be different and show that what you're doing is actually going to work. And so it's an extra challenge for people who are doing these super crops. And I don't have an answer on how to do that. You'll have to find that.
And was that the last two questions, Looney? I think it might have been.
Well, we're 2 minutes over. I don't see anything else in the chat window.
Sure. So what I'm going to say right now is we are launching a few new sections on our Mighty Networks right now. So if you check to it, there's a section underneath topics that's called Ask a Mentor. So go ahead and put your questions there. We're onboarding mentors this week. And so we will be directing our mentors to go there and make casual responses as well. So additional questions you might have, check it out on Mighty Networks underneath topics. We've added this section underneath homework where it's about your pitch deck. So you can upload the pitch deck you have within the next week. You might want to make some changes based on what you've heard here. We'll have the recording up by tomorrow, if not later today, but it's kind of late where you guys are in India. And the slides from Looney that you can refer to make any kind of improvements that you might want to make based on his remarks today. And was there anything else? Oh, next Wednesday, we want to start right at 6 p.m. And at 6 p.m., we're going to start talking about the structure of the mentorship and pitch practice program that we'll be having for the next 2.5 months. So you want to join that. If you're in the top 30, you will be getting mentorship, as you've seen through the documents we've sent through. If you're in the top 58, you're still able to participate in the pitch practice and additionally be able to apply to be one of the top people to pitch at the Impact Day we'll have in November. So we want to invite everybody to come at 6 p.m. so that we can share more specific details and documents that you can refer to on the mentorship. But I think those are the big announcements. Check Mighty Networks. A lot of things has been updated, and wanted to thank Looney. And I want to pass to Ashna and Kavita for some final farewells.
Ma'am, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Amanda. Yeah. So do we have a question? I think we are running over time.
Ma'am, just one simple question. Sir, the last slide was ask. You need to be specific what you want, what you're expecting from the investors. Are there any other options other than money, sir?
Oh, sure. If you're not raising money and you just need customers, ask for introductions to customers. If what's most important to you, you're getting customers, what you're missing is a marketing person, say, well, what we need right now is someone to run marketing, someone to run sales, someone to run finance. Like, ask for what you need. That's what we mean by ask.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
All right, with that, I'm going to head off.
Yeah. And thank you so much, Looney. So we had been hearing from the Africa cohort that they are benefiting tremendously from you. And it's a great opportunity for us today that you took out your valuable time. And now you are also known to our South Asia cohort. Thank you once again, Looney. And we are looking forward for your continuous support during our mock pitching sessions and the impact days. Thank you, Amanda, for introducing us to Looney and inviting him for the day. And thank you everyone for joining us today. Passing it on to Ashna for any closing remarks.
Yeah, I would just like to thank Looney for an amazing session today. I think he had to head off, and so he's left. But would also like to thank Amanda and Kavita, of course, for their session as well. And it was really, really important for all of you and very insightful. And yeah, I just want to thank everybody for joining today.